Hello, friends, and welcome to a special edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm joined today for a non-wrestling show by two guests, special guests. We're joined by paranormal investigators, expert ghost hunters, Ray Savino and Mustafa Gatollari. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, brother.
You know, we've been branching out a lot recently with our non-wrestling specials. They've been very popular, and Ray and I have been friends for a while, but wanted to kind of reach out to see what you guys do. And it's such a unique idea and something that's been kind of gaining popularity in the social media age. So I'm going to start with the obvious question. Mustafa, I'll start with you. How does one go about becoming a paranormal investigator? What led you down that path?
I'll try to keep this short. But I think most people start as paranormal investigators because they are either interested in disproving it or they are interested in proving it. Are proving the existence of, paranormal entities or a life after death, if you will. For me, I started it just to kind of disprove the existence of ghosts because my parents were always kind of blaming their problems on our house that we grew up in, which was haunted, and they were kind of blaming all of their problems on ghosts. And I was like, your marriage doesn't suck because there's demon or a jinn or a ghost doing it. It's because, you had an arranged marriage when you were 17, Ma. And there's no jinn that's stealing money from your bank account, Dad. It's, you have an 8th grade education from Eastern Europe and you're investing in stocks when you're like a laborer. Like, do what makes you money. Don't go and try to become, the Wolf of Wall Street. Like, I don't understand. And I got kind of upset that they were like constantly blaming it on ghosts. So for like years, I had this like pent up kind of like hatred and animosity. And even though I experienced a lot of crazy things, I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to try to find practical explanations for all this. So then I started investigating and, digging into the history of our home. And then I started, hearing that there were like, oh, there's these paranormal investigative techniques. So I started applying those to different investigations and different locations that were in the tri-state area. And, I was left with more questions than I had answers. And then from then I was just kind of hooked. It snowballs. You join the drama club to impress a girl, and then you find out that you actually like acting or you like whatever it is. So I think that's kind of how it started with me.
You became a good hunter to impress the girls.
Oh, 100%. They just love it. The goth chicks. They just
it's like right up there with being like in the AV club.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's why do you join it? And then you find out like, oh, this is why I ended up liking it for other reasons. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Ray, I'm going to bounce to you the same question. How did you end up getting involved in paranormal investigating?
Well, there was a guy in a van in the alley, and he had a couch in the back, but we don't want to talk about that. I lived in Pennsylvania for a little bit, and I had one of those efficiency apartments, and it just so happened to be right next to a cemetery. So it was like a perfect like B horror film scenario. And weird stuff would happen. We had the old wind up windows. I go to work, I come back, the windows are open when I know I closed them, or I go and do the laundry in the basement of the complex, and I come back up and my TV is blaring, and lights are on and the faucet's on, just straight, it's just weird stuff. And finally I was sitting one night in the efficiency apartment, and the way it was set up was, you have your living room, dining room, all in one area, and I had the couch up against the wall, so when you look toward the left, you can look down the hall, and at the end was the bedroom, and then you had the bathroom on the side of the hallway. My door was closed, and I had my light on, and something made me look that way, and you could see a shadow go underneath the door. It's, it just blocked the light from the bedroom light. Mm-hmm. And I knew it wasn't my cat, because it was like, she was on the couch with me. And so it just made me curious. And I finally had enough courage to tell a friend of mine about the situation. And He swears up and down he didn't do it. I swear up and down he didn't. I didn't. So being near the cemetery, we got up enough courage and kind of roamed all over the cemetery. I couldn't even tell you how long it took us. It took us a while, but um, one of the questions we asked for a name and it said Toby. Um, we finally found a headstone of a boy around, I can't remember exactly the exact date, but it was somewhere in the mid 1800s, 1830, 40, something like that. And it was Tobias, which I thought was crazy to be able to find something.
So
I'm not saying it was a little boy. But for me to have something like that happen when I know for a fact that neither one of us did it. So it kind of sparked my interest. And then coincidentally enough, later on in the years, the Ghost Hunter shows came on. And I was like watching and I'm like, holy shit, there's actually dorks like me that are interested in ghost hunting. That's pretty cool. So I ended up trying to look for groups and stuff when we moved to the Hampton Roads area, Virginia, because I lived in Northern Virginia at the time. And I got into a group, and they were a lot younger than me. They were more into World of Warcraft than they were to actually learning about paranormal.
Nerd.
Yeah. I'm a Pac-Man Galaga guy, so I don't know shit about World of Warcraft.
That was cool.
So, I kind of just said, fuck it, and made my own paranormal group and learned as I went. I asked tons of questions. I read books. I got in touch with locations and emailed a bunch of places, and some returned the emails with some kind words. Some, in so many words or less, said I was a fry short of a Happy Meal. But you learn as you go, and the more I was able to get into locations with my group, the more I was able to learn and experiment and try to put pieces of a puzzle together for me, I don't know, I'm going to assume Mustafa is going to agree, but the more you go to one location, the more information you're able to find each time you go, and you're closer and closer to finding the reason or the solution for the activity at that place. And that's what I enjoy the most. To be able to associate myself with Mustafa and Daryl and Rochelle and Brian, I have an arsenal of people that I can learn from. And, I've been ghost hunting for over 12 years, and I don't consider myself a professional or an expert or anything. I'm still learning. I'm almost 50, and to be able to not only call these people my friends, but to learn from them. I still ask questions. You're never too old or too eager. I'm not proud to beg. I'll ask anybody any questions I need to, to better myself for my clients or for the location. And for me, that's very important if you're trying to help people out.
Well, that's a good point. And something, Mustafa, you mentioned that it's a great transition, as Ray talked about constantly growing. You said that you implemented certain, you implemented certain paranormal investigation techniques. I guess from the outside looking in, how do you develop techniques, or where do you go to find certain things like that, where you say, look, for lack of a better description, how do you become an expert in something that's a science that's ever growing?
Man, I don't know. It's impossible to be an expert in this field, I think, because one, there's several reasons why it's impossible to be an expert in this field. One, we're finding out new things every single time we go and investigate, almost, it feels like. Just in these past 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters, we've revealed some really startling similarities from investigation to investigation that are super duper exciting. The fact that pressure changes, extreme changes in pressure, whenever there's paranormal activity or, weird activity going on, there's always a correlation with these changes in pressure and barometric pressure. And then to add to that, you have correlating instances of pressure changes along with photon events that are being measured not by some device a dude made in his garage, but an actual piece of scientific equipment that is implemented by the likes of NASA. NASA, is not screwing around. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, NASA does not fuck around. So there's that's a quote from him. You can check it up. I'll have to edit his Wikipedia page, I think. But no, but in all seriousness, it's impossible to be an expert in this field. One, because we don't have that much actual documented scientific, not know-how, but scientific credible evidence that there's paranormal stuff actually going on. And two, because there's a lot of quacks out there. You got people who are really, really been caught, people with TV shows who have been caught faking stuff. There's people who, they've been caught. I mean, these are techniques that people do, in the AV club. We're talking about audio video, AV club,
right?
This, but literally stuff that people in the AV club do to fake. Oh, there's an apparition here, and it's wow, that's actually the oldest trick in the book. Or people manipulating equipment in very, very obvious ways. So I think that. Yeah, anyone who calls himself an expert in this field, I could say, or a professional. Yeah, like Ray says, is I think they're kind of full of baloney. We're learning every single day, and for me, it's just to answer the other part of your question is how do you adopt certain techniques from people? Apprenticeship exists for a reason. There's a great friend of mine. He's a very good friend of mine, a personal mentor. His name's David Vadim. He's not a paranormal investigator, but he makes a very good point about apprenticeship. Is apprentices in any single field copy the master or someone who's actually gotten somewhere, to the extent where they're copying so much that you have such an enthusiasm for copying their technique that you in turn get so sick and tired of yourself just copying that you add your own kind of spin to it. It happens with barbers, it happens with blacksmiths, it happens with chefs. That's what apprenticeship is you fake it, right? You're copying, but you're copying to such a high level that you can't just copy anymore. You are forced to put your own spin on it. And that's what's happened, I think, when I would watch certain paranormal investigators on TV that I respected, and still respect and their techniques. I'd be like, okay, cool, let me add my own spin on this. And that's what happened. I would see paranormal investigators. Grant Wilson's a huge example. The original Ghost Hunters cast members, I would watch them and stuff that they would do, and I'd be like, okay, this aspect of what they're doing is working for my investigations, so let me try this, let me try that, let me try this, let me try that. And we all learn from each other on the show, and I think we all kind of find a certain aspect of what somebody does, and then you copy it and then you make it your own. William Shakespeare copied all of his plots for his plays. you know what I mean? So not that I'm the Shakespeare of paranormal investigating, but I am. That's what I'm saying.
I guess then a follow-up for that, you mentioned obviously your involvement in television and the fact that Ray mentioned there are shows like that. How do you go about, maybe in your experience being in that end, how do you go about pitching to a network? Or were you approached by somebody to say, hey, look, we want to take a camera crew and follow us on these these paranormal investigations, these ghost hunts, whatever you wish to call it. Speaking of which, that's something I'm going to ask. Obviously, ghost hunters being the name, is the term ghost hunt acceptable, or is it paranormal investigation?
Ray, you can answer that first. That second question first. I've been talking.
Me personally, I don't get hung up on titles and names. You do what you want to do, and you do it because you love it and you have a passion for it. If you want to ghost hunt, then call it ghost hunt. If you want to investigate the paranormal, call it that. But with me, there's a difference between doing something like a ghost hunt for the thrill of it, and there's a difference between that and ghost hunting or investigating the paranormal to learn from it, to find the history of what is that could be causing it. How does, like he was saying, all this, the scientific stuff, the air, the pressure, and all that other stuff that's involved with the research of it. I like researching and reading and stuff like that. And when I ghost hunt, that's what I do. I research the history, I research the claims, I interview the clients. I even ask them to write a journal of all their the times that it happened, so I at least have an idea what I'm looking, what I'm trying to look for when I do an investigation or when I ghost hunt the place. To me, it's just, I'm not really hung up on names and titles, but there's a lot of people in the field that have a big stink between the term ghost hunter and paranormal investigator. I don't know. I'm easy. It doesn't really matter to me.
Fair enough. Well, then, Mustafa, back to you for the first part of that question.
Yeah.
How do you go about becoming a cast member of a show like that?
Casting couch.
Yeah. So
Jesus.
there was a casting couch instance. Let me tell you, I put the work in. All right. They don't call me Mustafa Power Bottom Gatollari for nothing. No, but,
Oh my God.
We won't get into that. But this whole casting process for the show is actually really, really interesting. I was the only person on the new Ghost Hunters cast who actually sent in an audition tape.
Okay.
I had a friend of mine knows I'm into paranormal investigating. He knows I'm pretty comfortable getting on camera because I have no shame. And he sent me an email that says, "Hey, there's a paranormal show." Didn't say which one it was. There's a cable paranormal show that is looking for paranormal investigators. So I had the thing open on like a internet browser tab on my phone for like weeks, and I knew that the day was approaching. So I had gone on a weekend vacation with my wife to California. While we were taking the shuttle back from the rental car place, I saw I had the thing. I was like, let me email them, tell them my story. So I told them the story about the haunted house that I grew up in and why I love paranormal investigating. And then they said, "Hey, we want to see an audition tape." So I said, "Okay." So I sent an audition tape, and I must have done like 20 something takes, and then I uploaded it, and I was like, "This isn't good." And I did another take, and I finally liked it because I wanted to get myself and what my personality was entirely on camera, because I have a really big problem with, just really not portraying who I am. That's a big, big problem. You grow up as some like Muslim kid, as the only one in the neighborhood. You're always going to try to pretend to be what other people want you to be. "Hey, don't be afraid of me. I'm not like those guys you see in Back to the Future in the beginning who steal the plutonium, I swear." So it's like all that stuff. It's like a very no, just F it. Just be Mustafa. Just do you. So I went at it from that perspective. Is I'm going to talk about why I love paranormal investigating, because I left a pretty lucrative, situation I had. I actually lost money taking the show, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do it. And I didn't. Finally, we went through this whole casting process. They made us take psyche eval tests. Well, I don't know how the hell I passed that. And then we did all this stuff, and I told them why I love paranormal investigating, how I came into it. I'm this researcher. They put us in this room. There was like a spotlight, and you're in a chair, and everybody's in darkness, and you got the head of Pilgrim Studios, who owns the rights to Ghost Hunters, grilling you. And to me, because I wasn't trying to portray, because I wasn't like, "Ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me." I was more like, this is why I love to do what I do. This is why I do it. This is what I'm about, and struggling with that, and trying to fulfill, knowing in the moment, wow, I'm like not loving this as much as I could, or this is the reason why. This doesn't mean a lot to me. So I'm really working in that very kind of cerebral place of just trying to love it as much as I can. And they responded to it. You know, they called me pretty quickly afterwards, and I didn't sign the contract until 3 days before I went out.
Oh wow.
Like, yeah, I still wasn't sure, and I finally, you know, I went back and forth with them, and I finally, okay, cool, agreed to do it after, you know, certain terms and conditions were met, and then I did it, and then from then on, I was like, okay, cool, now I can do the job the way I want to, and I went on the road, and yeah, that was it, you know. But I know the other members of the team, they were, I think, approached. They had their own paranormal teams. I didn't have a team name. We would go out and go to places, but I would say if anybody's trying to get on TV as a paranormal investigator and they want to have a TV program, I would say just put all of your content on social media. Put your stuff up on there. Put your experiments up on there. Put any kind of data and documentation you can put up on there. Like if I had a network and I'm looking for a team, put people on there. Your personality, trying to be funny or cool and stuff, that doesn't work because that's not livable. I saw so many people in that audition, right? Because there was like a bunch of people they brought to LA. I saw so many people who were talking so much shit and pretending like they were so cool. And then the second they got on camera, it wasn't livable because now you're under the microscope. So all of your shit talking didn't matter at all because you were just pretending to be something you weren't, and you weren't confronting the fact that you were full of freaking shit. So then everybody went up there and it's like, oh, I swear, dude, I was just like, afterwards, I knew they weren't gonna make it. I was kind of a dick. You can ask anybody like on the team. Like I wasn't really paying anybody any attention because I was like, I'm not gonna let you throw me off my game. I got to do my thing, what matters to me. So, yeah, I would say be selfish in a good way. You know, demand the best of every single situation, and demand the best of yourself in every situation. People are going to be threatened by that. Do not let them take you off your game. Do what you need to fucking do. Sorry, keep cursing. But
No, you're good. That's fair. It's interesting to get that perspective because you know, obviously being a wrestling show, a lot of our conversations, well, since starting as a wrestling show, a lot of our conversations stem from how did you get into the business and how did you get involved. And we've had writers and actors on that have had very unique stories, and it's always fascinating that every single person who ends up in front of the camera somewhere in the world has a completely different path to get there. There's no guaranteed way to make it. Fake it till you make it kind of mentality sometimes. Yeah. So I guess you mentioned something that I'm going to bounce to you, Ray. You talked about the teams and forming everything, and then you also mentioned some of your style. So on your side, how do you go about when you guys put yourselves out there? You talked about your emails and some of the messages you got, both good and bad. I'm sure, hey, I want to come to your building and do a paranormal investigation. You probably get some pretty creative rejection letters. How do you go about putting your name out there? Is it literally a cold call system? Like, hey, introduce yourself, and rumor is your hotel's haunted, I want to talk to you, or your temple, church, whatever. How do you go about setting one of these up, an investigation up?
Well, when I first started RTL Paranormal, it's basically what I did, about 50 to 100 emails a week, just in hopes of getting that one email that lets me in, just to do our thing. And, you know, 12 years later, that's what I still do. And I'm not saying that I'm anything, but after 12 years of doing, you know, close to 200 investigations, I like to think that RTO is kind of a familiar name around here in Hampton Roads, Virginia. So that kind of helps a lot too. And word of mouth, you know, if you do a private home and they love everything that you did to help them out, they'll let other people that they know who have similar situations at their house or business and stuff. So with the emails and word of mouth and stuff like that, we have been able to make a name for ourselves that way. I mean, it's not often that, you get a little paranormal group such as such as RTL to be able to do military bases, buildings on military bases, or military ships, stuff like that, which I think was pretty cool. Some of the places that we've done is, Langley Air Force Base. We did 633rd Contracting Building. At Oceana Amphibious Base, we investigated the USS Zuni, which, if you ever saw the movie Perfect Storm, it was the Coast Guard ship that tried to save that dreamy Mark Wahlberg and from the ship and stuff when it was sinking. Those are going to be memories. And like Mustafa was saying about putting your stuff out there, if you want to be known. I didn't want to be known, I guess. I put stuff out there on just Facebook. I never did anything on YouTube until maybe last year. What I did was I wanted people to hear or see the things that other homeowners have experienced, just so they don't feel like they're nuts, because there's a lot of people out there that are scared of what's going on in their house.
Right.
It's like they feel too embarrassed to ask for help, and who are they going to ask,
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's where I come in, or other paranormal groups come in. We don't, no matter what story that they tell us about what's going on in their house, we don't judge them, but we will try to help them figure out what the problem is, what's causing it. And 75, 80, maybe even 90% of the time, it's easily, what's causing it. It's not paranormal. So that helps them a lot. I had one, it was an older lady that lived in Virginia Beach. She lived there with her grandson. She was hearing noises in the middle of the night that she thought was paranormal. She said she was, because of health issues, she was confined to the main floor of the house.
Okay.
So she couldn't go upstairs because of her health and stuff. Phantom smells is what she was claiming and stuff like that. So, we did a walkthrough. Come to find out, we saw, vented up Mountain Dew can with some couple of holes in it that smelled a lot like pot resin. We found a vent that birds build a nest in. So that was causing the noises that she was hearing. So, we get a lot of that. And for them to find out that it's not paranormal, that we went out of our way to not claim that everything is ghost related, is reassuring and makes them feel better about their situation, or about us for that matter, because we're not calling everything a ghost. There were, a lot of them are surprised by the amount of research we do about the history of the location or the land. I have people on my team that love doing research, looking for land deeds and a list of homeowners that go from the 1800s to today and stuff like that. It's a lot of work, but we enjoy it. That's why there's a shit ton of paranormal groups out there, because there's a lot of groups out there that enjoy doing this stuff and they enjoy helping people. And then there's some, like Mustafa said, that they didn't make a paranormal group or form a paranormal group to help people. It was more like to help themselves kind of thing.
They're in it for the fame or the money or something.
Or like an ulterior motive, or 15 minutes of fame or whatever. But there is a lot of paranormal groups out there that are the exact opposite. They do it because they love it. They do it because they want to help. And the more questions that we ask, or the more we look for answers, the more questions we have.
Okay.
And that's what I enjoy about it. There's not a set game plan as to what causes and what causes the activity that people experience.
Right.
But now it's coming to a point where, because of ghost hunters, that it's more science based. Like Mustafa was talking about, they had equipment from NASA lent to them for some of the, for most of what, season 2, right?
Yeah, I mean NASA didn't give it to us. It's equipment that they use. I don't want anybody to think I'm calling up NASA and be like, "Yo, what's up?
Hey,
Send over the
continue
rocket." You know
saying-
what I'm saying? Yo, Elon, getting SpaceX stuff. But no, it's
Well,
the electron multiplying cameras are used by NASA to study photon events in space.
that's interesting. That's actually a good transition there, Ray. You talked about your research, Mustafa. On your end, a typical paranormal investigation. How much of that is in the library? Is in front of the computer versus how much of it is actually in the house or in the room with the equipment?
Yeah, I mean the actual investigation when we're on location is just a portion of our case, our casework that we do. We're lucky at Ghost Hunters to have a production team, and we have researchers in the production team who will go by and help to vet stuff. But I'm working with them. The second we know we're going to investigate a place, it's like, okay, cool. This is the data that you collected. Let me go, and I'm just psycho like that. I'll be like, okay, let me go and vet everything that they gave me and double check stuff. And I'll be like, okay, there's incongruencies here. This person says that this happened, or this source says this, and this one says that. Let's get to the bottom of these. So then I'll take those incongruencies, see if I can get the real story on those, and then I'll conduct my own research to see what I feel will be the most pertinent kind of the pertinent trains of thought that we might want to follow for the investigation. For some reason, when I put my heads, and then I'll put my head together with other members of the team, and then Brandon and I and Daryl, especially, we kind of have this like good thing where we go on it, and then but other members of the team, Brian, Rochelle, and Kristen, will all kind of sit together and powwow as well too. I just happen to spend a lot of time with Brandon, and a lot of times we'll be like, especially in Pampa, Texas, the season finale of season 1, when we were in Pampa at the Worley Hospital, him and I just knew, we're like, yo, it has something to do with Mary Lucille Myers. And then that's where we were like, we had these little bets with each other. Be like, what do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be? So sure enough, like that was like, it was Mary Lucille Myers, like 100%. We have multiple pieces of evidence to really back up the theory that there is an entity there and it's this woman. So that was really, really cool. But the research that we plays a big part. Now, there are some people who are empathic, or they're mediums, psychics, whatever you want to call it, and they don't want to know the research because they don't want that influencing anything that they find inside the in the course of the investigation. But yeah, man, the research and a lot of that work, the pre-planning, is a huge part of it. A huge part of it. What a lot of people don't see on TV is like, you're probably catching like 5% of what we do on TV. That's like, I'm not even exaggerating. You're probably capturing, maybe getting 5% of the work that we do. There's so much more that goes into it. As Ray will tell you, he knows.
And that's fascinating. And I kind of want to have you continue on this thought here. You mentioned the evidence. That's a good point. Paranormal investigation is an interesting bit in that, on one hand, it is a science, but then on the other hand, there's the ways that science is measured, peer-reviewed studies and things like that. It's impossible to do with the paranormal investigation. So how do you formulate evidence when you have things like you mentioned the barometric pressure, and you have obviously you hear stories of like electrical fields and cold spots and things like that, or in the case you mentioned, mediums, another science that's impossible to prove. How do you formulate evidence? Where does I guess to kind of knock it out, explain from say the perspective of a skeptic or someone who maybe might be more based in science, where you have to formulate evidence of a paranormal investigation. How does that come about, where you have to be able to prove something without the evidence itself being what they call a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like, I detected an electrical field in an area where paranormal activity was reported. That is proof that electrical fields represent paranormal activity, when in fact that's not the way that evidence is usually collected. So I don't want to try and ramble on the question, but how do you formulate evidence in a field that is ever growing as far as how evidence is gathered?
Yeah, I mean, what we always try to do is we try to get corroborating devices and use technology and devices that are adapted from other industries. For example, like the electron multiplying camera, we call it the EMCCD for short. We also like to implement microphones and audio recorders that are just used in other industries. So in the film industry, yeah, they have an EDI. That is all that does is it just detects different changes in the environment. So temperature changes out of nowhere, pressure changes out of nowhere, EMF out of nowhere. So I think the best way to describe how we scientifically document or prove that something is paranormal, I would take an example from an investigation that Daryl and I conducted in Haines, Alaska at the Halsing Hotel on the 4th floor. There was a witness that we interviewed that said on 3 separate occasions after he had finished his shift at work, he lay down in bed and then he started getting a weird sensation. Then he felt someone grab his arm. He looked up. He saw an old man. He couldn't move. He was paralyzed for about 5 seconds. And then he got out of there. He stopped staying in that area after it occurred 3 times. So naturally, I was like, okay, you were tired after the shift. Maybe it was a lucid dream. Maybe it was one of those, those night terrors, where half of your brain falls asleep and you're there and you're kind of caught between that state of dreaming and being awake. However, it was the same man every 3 times. And I said, okay, well, how did it look like? And he says, well, it was kind of staticky. And it was almost like it was like a black and white static image. I said, okay. So while Daryl and I were investigating, we're there, we're asking questions. We start hearing footsteps in the hallway. Nobody's moving. Okay, that's kind of weird. After we start hearing those footsteps, I start smelling mothballs. Nobody else could smell them. I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then I can't move my arms. So maybe it's the cold, maybe it's my fear coming over me. I literally looked into the camera. They didn't put this in the show. I look in the camera. I says, I'm really fucking pissed off right now because there's no way to document whether or not someone's causing or something's causing this paralysis. Right when I say that, we start getting pressure changes on our data logger. Okay, cool, very interesting. But then Daryl, right when I say, hey, I can't move my arms, Daryl's like, yeah, I feel a tension in my lower back. Again, could just be an experience. Okay, cool. There's changes in pressure. Could just be a coincidence. Then Daryl swears something charged him to the point where he jumps into another room. He's like, yo, something just charged me. And I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. We're having all this stuff happen.
Now, remember, it's pitch dark. So for like Daryl to see something charging at you in the black of night, you get. I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
It's weird, but again, these are all firsthand experiences. What do they matter unless you have something to back it up? Cool. Daryl asks again. Hey, you got me once. Try charging me again. You're not going to do it. Not even like a few seconds later, boom, he gets charged again. Daryl gets scared again. So I was like, oh man, he got you. Okay, cool. Whatever. These could all be experiences. Any other show, this makes for great TV. It's cool. They're spooky. Maybe, I was freaking out. You cut to commercial break, and then you come back and it ends up being nothing. Well, it actually did end up being something. We, on Daryl's body camera, right before he gets charged, you see a shadow figure, very clear, go peek out from a door like this. That's at the same time we start getting pressure changes on our data logger. And then at the end of the hallway, we have an EMCCD camera that captured a mist that witnesses have said they've seen with their own eyes coming through that area. And it's a weird photon event. It's this mist that's going through. But then, before Daryl says, I feel a tension in my lower back, when I started talking about my arms being paralyzed where I couldn't move them, you hear another voice of like an old man saying, I feel a tension in my lower back. And then Daryl goes, I feel a tension in my lower back. And then while Daryl's getting charged, again, you hear that same voice say, it's me, go through the room. So in a span of 41 seconds, you have pressure changes, 2 shadow figures being captured on Daryl's body camera, an EMCCD camera picking up this mist that other people said they saw with their own eyes. I have my experience of not being able to being able to move my arms out of my pockets for about 5 seconds. We get that experience of smelling the mothballs, but then on top of that, we capture these 2 EVPs. So you have 7 experiential things, all of them being corroborated at the same time period by devices that cannot really be manipulated. So that's when you start to make a case for the stuff. Now, you can always have people who will say, you guys faked this, or you put this audio in there. And if you want to believe that we went and, we spent our time to CGI a shadow figure or whatever that is, it's, you can say that all you want. You're not going to believe. Right. But for us, we go through those lengths to try and capture that stuff. And,
the point you just brought up is actually a great segue to the next question. Ray, I was going to ask you, because you've told me some fascinating stories through the years. How do you go about what Mustafa just brought up with, it was faked, or it was whatever? You have had numerous high profile instances of psychics and seances and Ouija boards and skeptics or investigators that have been faking things. One of the more famous bits I can think of is Penn and Teller used to host a show called Bullshit, and they did several episodes on Ouija boards and investigations and paranormal, and numerous instances of high profile frauds. How do you go about, I don't want to say salvaging your reputation, because you guys have not been involved in that, but how do you go about establishing, look, here's what we saw, here's what we have, and here's why it's real, and we're not bullshitting you the way these other guys did?
Well, it's pretty simple. If they start calling me a fake or whatever, I'm like, well, why don't you just come with us on an investigation and see what you think? And 90% of the time they'll go, and 100% of the time they experience something that freaks them out,
right?
That they don't go again because they're pussies. No, I'm kidding.
No, it certainly takes a level of courage to chart certain unknown areas like that. I know there's people out there that might be fans of your show that would never want to go on any of these events with you. So, I mean,
I think a lot of it has to do with ego. If you're able to make fun of something that you're a skeptic of, even though you've never participated in an investigation of any kind,
mm-hmm.
That's easy to do, but it's a lot harder to salvage your reputation as the person who's, as a skeptic, if you actually get up enough balls to go to an investigation and then you get the shit scared out of you,
right.
It's kind of hard to man up after that. And, we don't have the equipment like Mustafa and the rest of the guys do on the show. But there's a lot of, like he said, stuff that are programs and phone apps and stuff made in garages. I'm not going to lie, we've used them. Am I a fan of them? No, especially phone apps, especially programs that, you load up on your computer. I have a thing about spirit boxes that have a word bank. It's very easy to believe everything that comes out of a spirit box or whatever. So it's not that often that I would use one.
If I can interject for a second here, since that's something that doesn't pop up very often, can you explain to the audience what a spirit box is?
There's a few different types of spirit boxes. One is basically like a digital radio that scans the stations. You can they have a couple that they can scan forward or backwards, and you can make it go as fast or as slow as you want, scanning through the stations. The theory about those is if there's a spirit there, they'll take the words from the stations to answer your questions, or if it's the spirit has enough energy to make it powerful enough, it can manipulate the radio to use their own voice to answer you.
Yeah.
The other ones that have the word bank that's developed in it. I have an issue with them, but I'm not going to say that. I've had an incident where I used a Spirit Box app that was on my laptop, and it was 2 months after my father died, and my father's voice came out of it. And my dad, it's a little bit similar story to Mustafa. My dad was from Italy, so he had like a distinct, Luigi voice, that thick Italian accent. And
of course,
yeah,
my last name is Sebastiano. I'm very familiar with how that sounds.
Oh, you're Jewish, great. My real name is Raphael, so he used to call me Rafi, for short. And every time I answer or I give him a call on the phone, the caller ID comes up, so he answers, Rafi, what are you doing? So, and that's what came out of the Spirit Box. It wasn't the words from the word bank. It was his own actual voice that first said Ray a couple of times, and then you hear Rafi. And I'll send it to you on Messenger. It's I still have it. It's
it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable.
2 months after he died, and I get to hear his voice one more time. So and that's coming from somebody who more or less doesn't think too much about those spirit boxes and
right.
Spirit communication apps and stuff. But I can't explain how that happened. Prior to getting his voice on the Echo Vox, which is a program, I was getting stuff out of the SB7, the Spirit Box 7, that was warning me basically about my father, saying he can't breathe, he's tired, and he needs rest. So I would stop the investigation or the event when it happened, take a break, and I give him a call, and I ask him what he was doing. And this was at Edgewood Plantation in Charles City. And I asked him what he was doing. He goes, Rafi, I'm tired. I can't breathe. I'm like, well, what are you doing right now? He goes, I'm tired. I'm laying down. I need rest. And I'm like, oh, shit. So, I can't explain that either. So I was getting warnings before he died. And then to kind of end it with, his voice one last time through the Spirit Box.
Right.
Which is odd because I don't think too much of them things. Me personally, my things are the Eddy, the data logger, the body cam or a camcorder, and a digital recorder, an audio recorder. That's the things that are my go-tos because you can't manipulate any of them. There's no way.
Right. I can understand that. I think it's interesting to hear you, because oftentimes, at least in my experience in research for the show and other things, that you have certain investigators that have their own certain go-to tools. I guess, Mustafa, I'm curious then, Ray's got his own. Do you have a story like that where you kind of had a personal connection with something you were investigating? Oh, I see that nod.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of want to continue just a little bit more on this point, and it's not that garage tech is inherently bad or inherently evil or anything. It's just that in order to help move the field forward and to take it out of the realm of pseudoscience into actual science, is that it's best to use technology that can be subjected to scientific scrutiny. When we capture something on a FLIR thermal imaging camera and we go to somebody who's worked that FLIR for 20 years and have them say, hey, I have no idea what the hell this is, that's kind of cool. To take an EMCCD camera to somebody who's worked on it, for a very long time or worked with those cameras for a very long time, not be able to explain what the hell is going on camera or what that is or what's creating this energy source out of nothing. And then you try to recreate it, any way that you can. That's pretty cool. So I think that's why we tend to stay away from a lot of garage tech for purposes of trying to push the field forward. It's fine if you want to go on an investigation, have an experience, and it's kind of fun. But when you have a client or you're trying to really do an investigation where there can be no question as to what you found is something that's paranormal.
Right.
I would say, better to stick with stuff that can be subjected to scientific scrutiny. So as for, those experiences where, there was like a personal connection, I was talking about that Alaska instance. I mean, that we were investigating right underneath there. And again, nothing's going on. All of a sudden we hear noises, and that's the floor right beneath it. We hear footsteps. And then I didn't even see it until recently, but I put it up on my YouTube channel. But like, we captured whatever Daryl captured on his body cam, I captured on this same cell phone here. It's a Google Pixel 3. I have and you see it, that same weird shadow figure on the bottom there. And we were capturing stuff, and it was crazy. But I will say, in Worley Hospital in Pampa, Texas, there's a lot of crazy things. I could talk about that thing for about like 45 minutes with Mary Lucille Myers, but I'll say the craziest part of that investigation is we started interacting. We believe we were asking, doing questions and answers, and what we believed to be the entity there was setting off our motion detector. And the motion detector works. It's an $8 motion detector. You can buy it off Amazon. If you stand close to it and key off your walkie-talkie, that'll set the motion detector off. So, shut off our walkies. We stayed away from it. I demonstrated. Pilgrim has the footage. I demonstrated how to turn it on and off or whatever. But the light was staying on, and we had, we were like, hey, if you have to step away from it, and if you want to answer yes, step back in front of it to turn the light on. Right after we said that, the light dims, which is pretty cool to happen in the moment. But here's where it gets even better. After we went to go review the audio, and we had several EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon, several, you hear a woman's voice, and it's just me, Brandon, and our cameraman, Eric, there.
Right.
Right after we say, hey, could you step away from the motion detector and then step back in front when you want to answer yes? You hear a woman say, oh, sorry. And then the light goes off.
That's
and dude, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we had a 25.5-minute long back and forth conversation through the motion detector. And it all happened just because I thought I saw somebody come in the room. And this is a hospital that was empty for decades.
Right.
There's no electricity going in, and we started getting EMF. And dude, there were so many amazing things that happened that that was probably the coolest though. Like, oh, sorry, and then the light dims. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I couldn't believe it. It was so amazing. Yeah, Worley Hospital. Any paranormal investigator, if you're in the Pampa, Texas area, see if you can investigate Worley. That place was phenomenal.
See, and that sounds more scary than and interesting on the outside. Quick shout out. Actually, it's funny you mentioned how these things and it is the idea of ghosts and paranormal and whatnot that can be scary. But you guys know what else can be really scary is the feeling of being unkempt in the summer heat. We're guys, we know that. You can fix that with our friends at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com is the leading producer of man trimming products, and they currently have their best package out, the Lawnmower 3.0. And I know if you're going to be running or dodging ghosts and spirits, you want to make sure nothing's sticking to your leg when you're doing that. And you can do that with Manscaped. Use promo code WrestlingFuture for 20% off your purchase. Manscaped.com, gentlemen. Your balls will thank you.
Oh, I see videos for that all the time. My younger brother actually has a lawnmower. He actually really likes it. I'm not just saying that. Like, he seriously really loves it.
Well, there you go. Free shout out there. But like I said, manscaped.com, use promo code WrestlingFuture for 20% off your purchase. and they have the best stuff out there. I love it. Yeah, obviously, we got a testimony right there. This gentleman has been on television, so his opinion means more than yours does. And actually, speaking of which, I want to shift momentarily, if I may. In research for the show, Mustafa, your television profile is listed as an actor, which obviously goes beyond ghost hunting. And I was curious, and I'm hoping maybe you could shed some light on this. One of the prominent roles that you had was in the television show 24, and I'm curious, how does one go about getting cast as a terrorist? Is it as simple as the fact that your name is Mustafa?
Yeah, I was on the blacklist of MacGyver. I think 24. They accidentally attributed me on that, but on IMDb. But I was cast a lot of times for like working as a terrorist or like an Arab, or like it's just an Arab side guy. They put me in. It's like I'm not even Arab, but like my name's Mustafa. So every time they call me into the casting office, I would go in, and there's been a few times where I go in, and this is gonna teeter on the inappropriate, but whatever. I'll just say it's just the reality of the business is like I'll step in and they'll be like, all right. And my last name Gatollari is, a lot of people assume, and I sound like in a North Jersey like Italian scumbag, like some dude you'd see at the gym, like what I mean? It's just like any kind of guy, just North Jersey Ginzo scumbag, like that's who I am. So like I would go into the casting office and they look down, they're like, all right, Mustafa, and then they look up and they're like, and they don't want to say it, and then finally. I remember it was like the 5th time that had happened. I looked at them, I was like, I'm not brown enough, right? And then they would like laugh. But to get on TV, it was interesting. I went to I just loved doing theater and stuff in college, and in high school I was part of like the drama club, and I always kept that's the big reason why I didn't even want to do the show at first, is because I like to kind of keep the acting stuff completely separate from the paranormal investigating. That was something I just did to help members of the Muslim Albanian community in the tri-state area. I had a lot of friends and family members. It's the reason why none of my stuff was online, because I did a bunch of home cases. I would go to like the weird New Jersey places, and even when I was in Eastern Europe, when I went to go visit Albania, I took a drive over to Serbia, and I went to this like crazy parking garage that people found out only afterwards was built over a mass grave. So there was a lot of cool, for the lack of a better word, like, for paranormal investigators, cool places that I checked out. But with acting, if anybody's trying to get into it, I would just say, just like anything, find a group of people who are good, like good actors. Try to find a good coach, and that'll teach you how to kind of work with yourself and work with your own perception and work with your own personality. The biggest problem I think with a lot of actors, or a lot of anybody in any industry, is that they think they're really good, and they think they're a lot better than they are, and they don't realize how much they suck. And I think you got to realize how much you suck at something, really, really suck, before you get better. And it believe it or not, it's that thing that you suck with that's actually the source of all of your talent, because it affects you on such a shallow level. I mean, ask anybody who was at the top of their profession in anything, and they'll tell you that's exactly what they were working with. Mike Tyson would cry before his fights. Cry because he'd practice and drill what he couldn't do. I can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. And then he'd go in the ring and he'd fucking kill you because it was so personal to him. So I think if you're trying to get into, entertainment's extremely, extremely competitive. And I remember like going to these auditions, and I'd hear people going in, they pretend they'd care so much. Oh, I'm such a mean terrorist. It's like, why do you want to be a fucking terrorist? Nobody wants that role. So I would kind of go in, and a lot of times I would get cast for these things because, when I got MacGyver, my whole audition tape was I was making fun of the fact that I was a terrorist. It was like, I wore like my dad went to Saudi Arabia, so he had got his stuff, the hattan, and I had a fake Kalashnikov, and I went to one of his contracting sites because my dad's a contractor, and the walls all fucked up behind me, and I'm sitting there, I'm like doing my best Osama bin Laden impersonation, completely like ridiculing it. They loved it. They called me and they loved it, and like, it was great. So I kind of just showed and had fun with the fact, like, oh, this is what you want me to be? I am evil terrorist. So like I did this whole thing, and it was it ended up being a lot of fun, and it was cool. So yeah, I would say make fun of your stereotypes, show what you can't do. We could talk about this for hours, but
Right.
yeah, that's how I got those roles. Yeah.
Sorry, that I didn't mean to sidetrack the conversation. That was just more of a personal curiosity. Actually, interestingly enough, I'm going to transition back. You said embrace the fact that you suck at something. I'm curious because when you talked about your audition for Ghost Hunters, you said the same thing. There were a lot of people in there that blustered and were clearly part of it. How do you go about embracing, for lack of a better term, embracing the suck and improving as a paranormal investigator when the way to be a paranormal investigator is not a set technique? There's not a set in stone method of how to do this well. How do you go about improving there?
Well, again, a lot of it, and Ray can attest to this too, is that the times when we get the most significant activity or evidence is always when you're at your most human. There is nothing more human than sucking. Nothing that we do works. You can feed a human being filet mignon. You love steak? Eat it every single day. See how much you love it. A fucking dolphin will eat tuna fish from the day it's born till the day it dies with a smile on its face. If you have pets, you give them that garbage Walmart dog food or cat food, it's like, rah, 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 rah. It eats it up like it's the best freaking thing it's ever had. Why? That's because animals don't suck. They're highly specialized into doing something that they do. Human beings are the only ones who, for whatever reason, we don't have it figured out. We just don't. Nothing that we do ever works for long periods of time. So that is a huge part of the technique. And again, it's my friend and mentor, David Vadim. He helped me a lot with this, but like embracing the suck of what you have, of what you can't do is the segue into any, I think, investigation that you have, because if there are entities there, how are you going to relate to them? That's probably, this is something that didn't show up, and Ray's heard this story a million times from me, but we're at St. Joseph's Plantation. It's the middle of the summer. I don't know if you've ever been to Louisiana, but the state bird is the fucking mosquito. They're everywhere. It's disgusting. You're getting swarms of mosquitoes, and I'm out there in the middle of the night. We're at this plantation. The producer's like, hey, why don't you go investigate the slave shack? I'm like, I'm not going to go fucking investigate a slave shack. Like, there's no way I can empathize or sympathize with what a slave's been through. This is a huge, tall order. I can't do it. There's no way. If I was a slave and I'm still, first of all, I wouldn't still be in the slave shack. I'd go off if I could. I would leave the fucking slave shack. But I also am not going to talk to two dudes who are trying to exploit me for TV views. It felt completely exploitative. I was like, haven't these people been, exploited enough? These entities been exploited enough? Slaves who have been here, haven't they been exploited enough? I don't want to go and do it again. But that's the whole thing. Sometimes that's how you connect with people. So I went in, we're staying there for like 25 minutes. We immediately get pressure changes on our data logger. We have the binaural microphone, which gives you like almost superhuman hearing, and we're recording. And I'm standing there and I'm feeling miserable, and I'm trying the best I could to sympathize with, what it would be like to live there. And I couldn't even imagine it. But that's addressing the elephant in the room, and again, embracing the suck. I got so fed up where I was like, I've only been in here for 20 minutes. I have no idea what it is you went through. I have no idea the kind of life that you led. And I'm like, there is no way I could ever fully sympathize with what you went through. But I want to tell you that whoever's here, for what it's worth, even though it was against your will, even though you had no say in the matter, even though you would probably rather be doing anything else, your actions, whether you agreed to them or not, helped build the foundation for this country. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you did, even though it was against your will. We go, we leave. Because I felt like I had to say something, because I felt so disgusting just going in there. Truly felt disgusting. We go back, we review the audio, and sure enough, after I go on this whole kind of self-effacing diatribe, you hear a woman say, thank you, afterwards. And it was just me, cameraman Eric, and Brandon in that slave shack at the time. So to get a response, they didn't put it in the episode, I don't know why. I guess it was too racially charged or whatever.
Right.
But they, that was 100%. Everyone we showed that thing to was like, what the hell? It's clear. It was clear as day.
Damn. Well, if I may, Ray, I'm gonna kind of transition there to something. Go back to something you mentioned earlier. You talked about growing up next to the cemetery, and Mustafa mentioned the parking garage that was built over the mass grave. Is it more common? Are the I hate to say it, but like, obviously TV movies, the Indian burial ground and is it more common to go to some place like a cemetery or a plantation where people have died and people are buried, or do you find more in say like a hotel or a house? I mean, the obvious hotspots. I'm going to go look for ghosts. I want to go to a cemetery. I'm going to go to a battleground. I'm going to go to a battlefield, Gettysburg or something like that. Do you find it's the hot spots, that what would be assumed to be the hot spots, are more common, or do you have more experience in places like a church or a house where you wouldn't usually expect to find something?
Uh, if you were a spirit, and the theory behind ghosts is, one of the theories is you go back to a place where you're the most happiest at, whether it's a certain age, or a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you die and you become a spirit, why in the fuck would you want to stay at a cemetery? You would go to where you were happy, a childhood home, or if you were going to church all the time, real religious, you would go to
Right.
your favorite church. Um, and a lot of people, they are attached to objects, so they would stay with an object that's inside a house. Um, if there was a lot of strife, let's say like battles, for instance, and you died on the land, well, your energy would be implanted into land. So if you build a house on top of that, well, of course your house. But the cemeteries, I never did understand the fascination with the cemeteries, because if there are spirits there, it's like, okay, just leave them there. I mean, they need to rest.
Right.
Out of respect. There's a lot of paranormal groups out there that ghost hunt cemeteries, and I have an issue with that. Just out of respect for the people that pay their wishes to their family members and stuff. Like, why would you want to go visit your uncle, your father's gravesite, and have some guy screaming, "If there's somebody here, can you please give me a sign?" It's like, I don't want to hear that when I'm like putting flowers on my dad's gravesite.
Yeah, turn that flashlight off, please. Turn it off. It's like, dude, just let me
But
rest.
but I mean, me personally, I've done one cemetery, and that was because I was kind of pushed into it. Me personally, I don't do cemeteries, or try not to do family plots or whatever, because there's a lot of historic homes that they will have the little family plot in the backyard of the house and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I try not to do those, because I feel like I'm disrespecting people. And Mustafa and the rest of the guys from Ghost Hunters, they can tell you, if you do an investigation, or if you're ghost hunting, there's some ghost hunting shows that it sounds more like they're interrogating the ghost instead of like asking questions. So of course you're going to get them pissed off, and then every response is demonic, which drives me fucking nuts, because not everything is demonic.
Or it's just exploitative. It's like, dance for me, dance for me, dance for me. Hey, do this for me. Oh, look at this. Look what I made this do. It's like, no, they're a fucking person, man.
Mm-hmm.
And Mustafa, he can attest to it. I get more activity or responses, or when you talk to them as if we're talking right now. If you talk like they were a human being, because they were, you would realize that you would get more of a response, or fluctuations in your devices that you're using, if you show them the respect. Like when Mustafa was at the slave shack, and he showed deep compassion for the people that lived in there and what they went through back then. and he got more of a response. Now, if he flipped the script and started doing the good cop, bad cop routine on, at the Slave Shack, he might have gotten either no response or he would have got slapped in the face by a spirit.
Right.
So you don't want to piss anything off that you don't know anything about. You see me at the wrestling shows, Dan. I try to be as respectful as I can to the people that are living, and that's how I present myself to the people that are not living anymore. And that's the people I associate with.
I've seen him throw out some Ruley fans, Mustafa. Don't listen to him. He's
Hey, that 6-year-old had it coming. Don't come to
that's you talk about respected people, and you mentioned the recordings, and I guess I'm curious then, the second transition there is, we live in the digital age. Everybody, you Mustafa, earlier you mentioned catching something on your phone. Pretty much everybody walking around has a recording device in their pocket. There are security cameras, high def digital cameras almost everywhere, every major city, hotels, buildings, businesses. I guess from the outside, I'm curious, how come there's not more evidence? I mean, as cameras became more prevalent in society, all of a sudden there was thousands of pictures of UFOs, and more hikers started seeing Bigfoot. I'm just using those as examples. I'm not trying to compare, but I'm saying is how come there's not, just my social media or YouTube isn't flooded with amateur pictures and videos? Is it that personal connection that ghosts understand, like a paranormal entity understands it's being investigated, or is it one of those things where you need the right equipment in order to see or catch some of this stuff?
I think it's a combination of different factors. One is kind of like theory, and the other is just what I've noticed from my cases with ghost hunters. So I think like the first theory goes with one, there are a lot more stuff cropping up on social media. I've seen countless viral media stories of different people, and a lot of them have been easily explained, and a lot of them have been easily debunked. A lot of our claims from Ghost Hunters Season 1 were pretty much all from social media stories, and that's where we got them from. So there's that, but you would expect there to be more. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the nature of being, there was two dystopian future novels that are classics in American literature, and that's Fahrenheit 451 and Brave New World. Fahrenheit 451, written by George Orwell, Brave New World, written by Aldous Huxley. Now, George Orwell thinks that the future is going to hide the truth, and governments in the future are going to hide the truth because of fascism. We're going to censor the stuff that you can't see, and you're never going to have access to it. And Aldous Huxley was like, hey, you're not going to see the truth because you're going to be inundated with so much stuff that getting to any type of truth is going to be impossible.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Just to interject real quick.
Yeah.
You said Fahrenheit 451 and George Orwell. Are you talking about 1984?
Ray Bradbury. Yeah, I'm talking about 1984. You're right. Yeah, not George Orwell. That's 1984.
Okay. I was just making sure we're on the same page. So you're talking about
Ray Bradbury. Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. Both of them are. I'm sorry. Both of those novels deal heavily with censorship. You know what I mean? And keeping materials from people. So Aldous Huxley's Brave New World is like, the truth is there if you want to find it. There's just so much other stuff going on that you're not going to really look at it. So I think in the paranormal field, what's happening is there's such an influx of so much bullshit and so much just fake snake oil salesmen that whenever somebody brings about something that's like, kind of, oh, that's pretty interesting, or this is an interesting theory, people are automatically going to write it off or not really look at it because it's kind of lost in all the sensationalism. Just like stories and news stories today, it's like, oh my God, Kim Kardashian's ass like got another inch added to it. Wow. But then it's like, oh, but what about this thing that happened overseas that has like great global, implications for like, an election or something? It's like, well, we're not looking at that because some TikToker just showed their ass on like a video, and then everybody's looking at that. So I think that has something to do with it. But also with equipment, it's weird, man. Like we captured, we've noticed on the body cameras, for some reason, whatever frame rate that's running at on the body cameras, we will pick up a shadow figure, plain as day to see. But on our lock-off cameras, of those 4K cameras that we have, for some reason, nothing's coming up on them. And it's like, you'll have a body camera will pick up something, but the lock-off camera, and I think it has something to do with the frame rate. I mean, it's not like, oh, this is a smudge on the camera. Like, we go and try to recreate it. We can't. But on some cameras, like on the 4Ks, I don't know. And there's different theories. It's weird. Like on the body camera, it's like something's there, and it's like you look at them with the camera, and it's like it moves away. Why is that? I don't know. I have no idea.
That's interesting. Ray, I want to transition there. When he was mentioning the cameras and the evidence and all, you guys do a lot of stuff that deals with, for lack of a better term, like the I don't want to say the gotcha moments, but like, look, this is this and this is that. I know you told me the fascinating story about those paintings, in the paintings in the Mason Temple near where I live, and I guess I'm curious, where do you find the evidence in that sense of, look, we've got this piece of evidence here, but we can't corroborate it because of X, Y, and Z. How do you establish that as proof or as something if your own gear isn't talking to each other?
You can't. If you
so
can't,
then it becomes kind of subjective then.
Well, if I can't prove it with another piece of equipment, then it's hard for me to call that evidence, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Because, I can have a digital recorder, an audio recorder there that captures a voice. And I can just sit there and say that it's a ghost, but without any other piece of equipment like a video or, a camcorder, a body cam, or something to collaborate with that disembodied voice, I wouldn't call it evidence. And there's a lot of paranormal groups and a lot of paranormal investigators out there that wouldn't do it either. If you don't, like Mustafa was saying, you have a data logger, you have a body cam, you have a digital recorder, and they all pretty much capture the same thing. And the data logger pretty much coincides with the exact time that it happened, that kind of coincides with the time on the digital recorder.
Right.
That is solid proof, and that would be considered, for lack of a better term, evidence. But if I have a digital recorder that whispered my name with nobody else there to collaborate with me, or to have another digital recorder capture that voice, I would keep it for myself, but I wouldn't consider it evidence, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand.
Because
go ahead, sorry.
I try not to be like, there's, I don't scream ghost every time I see something on a photo or a video or on my digital recorder. If you capture a voice, you want to try to figure out what caused that voice. Then you got to figure out who was in the room, who was in the hallway, who was around the corner, and try to figure out what you have to scrutinize your own evidence. You have to be your own worst critic before I would be my worst critic before I would present anything out on social media and saying, I don't even call my stuff evidence, to tell you the truth. What I say is, I capture something that I cannot figure out why it happened, who said it, or whatever. Because there's a lot of people in the paranormal field that would love for somebody to call something evidence, and they will tear it down, up and down, all over the place, and be the, what do you call it? The couch quarterback.
Right.
When it comes to
the armchair quarterback.
Armchair quarterback, and try to talk shit about your stuff, even though they weren't there. They don't know what happened. So for me to put anything out on social media, it would have to be 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, something that cannot be explained by anybody, I would ask tons of questions. I would take a picture and send it to photo experts if I could find some, or somebody that has a lot of years experience and with videos and stuff like that. I've even there was a client who had a musical clock that never played for years, just sat on the shelf, and things started happening in her house. And every once in a while, the musical clock would chime a couple of pieces of music, and then it would just stop. And she would think that it was something was making it do that, a ghost or something. I took that thing and I went to what do you call it? The clock, the people that fix clocks and stuff like that. And I asked them what would cause something that never was wound up, never played in its life to do that once. And it was dust. Dust would hold it for long, just long enough, until it couldn't do it anymore. So when the dust or whatever breaks off on, it would make the music. And I'm like, well, fuck. Okay, great.
That's it.
You have to do stuff like that to, you got to think outside the box. And that, I think that's what makes the guys on the
music
show.
box.
And I think that's what makes the ghost. And I think that's what makes the show real popular with a lot of people. It's not, they're not using gadgets that everybody else is using. They're using actual stuff that is pretty significant. I mean, stuff from scientists, NASA, data loggers that logs all the data that happens during an investigation. Mustafa does shit ton of research for each location. You put all, and that's what I think makes the show popular. It's like they took it to another level, and the level that needs to be reached by everybody else. I mean, you got, what is it, UVA? Now they got a department that studies paranormal. They have paranormal studies to try to figure out.
University of Virginia.
I think it's UVA or VU. It's over by what's that college by Ashland? Is that UVA or Virginia Tech? One or the other. But they do have they began, I think, a year or two ago, Department of Paranormal Studies or something. So to have a college do something like that to try to prove or disprove paranormal activity, I think is a big step. And I think using all the equipment that they're using on the show is, takes it to the next level, and I think that's, and what you see on the show and how he, like Mustafa and all of them are acting like on the podcast. If you went to a Flumery Promotions event where we have Daryl and Mustafa and Brian and Rochelle, what you see on the shows or on the podcast is what you will see in person. They're that down to earth. There's a lot of guys that people look up to that have TV shows that, they wear all black, or they wear their little brother's T-shirts to accentuate the muscles. That go around talking about demons all the time.
Yeah, I wear my little sister's T-shirts. God damn it.
Oh no. That's funny.
But they put themselves on like a pedestal, which I don't like. I like people that are down to earth and easy to talk to, and you able to learn things from.
Right.
And
then why do you hire me for those events?
Because of that butt.
That's funny.
If you have never seen Mustafa's booty, it is majestic. I'm telling you.
I will have to I'll have to take your word for that one. Well, gentlemen, as we get ready to wrap up here, Mustafa, I'm going to ask the final question of you. Other than the obvious being come with me on a walkthrough, if you were to get unfortunately in the social media age, people tend to lose what the term skeptic is. They often say, I'll never be convinced I'm a skeptic. That's not a skeptic. A skeptic wants to be convinced. They just want evidence that they can see and understand and double check and all that. So from your side, then you have somebody who doesn't believe, doesn't understand. What do you do? What is your method, or how do you go about convincing them?
I don't. I kind of just operate as a skeptic myself in my investigations. I don't really go and try to disprove or prove things to other people. What I'll do is I have the evidence of an investigation that I believe is something worth looking into. I then take that evidence or whatever materials that I've documented, and then I bring that to someone who's an expert in analyzing that stuff. And if they can't explain it, then I say, okay, cool. Let me see if I can find any correlations of what caused me to capture this evidence in the first place and see if I can recreate it. If I can't recreate it, or if I notice correlations like the drops in pressure, then I start to try and see, okay, well, how can I build on this? Let me try to add other devices and equipment. For example, pressure. A big thing that I'm kicking around in my head now is the presence of an entity what is causing that drop in barometric pressure, or do these entities enjoy environments that have drops or increases in barometric pressure? So now I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, how can I create a portion of the room that has less pressure in it? Let me create a vacuum chamber and see if I can like trap a ghost or whatever or something in this vacuum chamber. So there's different things that I want to kind of put around, see what happens. There's different equipment and stuff that, Brandon and I are constantly talking about, and seeing if we can get actual engineers to build it for us. People who are, accredited and have worked in different scientific fields, and then getting that equipment vetted and testing it and all that stuff. So, I'm not really looking to convince people. I am looking to get the most sound evidence that I can, taking it to people who are experts in their field and being like, hey, what is this? And that's the only thing I want to do. I'm not out here to prove the presence of ghosts. I'm not out here to prove that there's a life after death and that whatever God you believe in or whatever it is right or anything like that. The only thing I'm there for is to see, okay, these people have claims of paranormal stuff going on. Can I document it? Is it haunted? And are there correlations? Is there a formula to this haunting? So that's the biggest thing that I want to do, is what's the formula of each haunting? So that's pretty much what I'm working for every single time. If you're not interested in it, that's fine. I am. So I'm just going to keep doing it. Suck a fat one. I don't give a shit. Like, I'll just go do what I want to do. So that's how I operate. I'm not here to convince anybody. I really am not. I have myself, my own standard that I got to do. And I really, trust me, like Ray will tell you, I've thrown stuff out a lot of times. And if somebody, who works at FLIR tells me he doesn't know what this thermal imaging hit, I'm probably going to listen to the guy who's worked at thermal imaging for 20 years rather than, Jake who, fucking, I don't know, sells chiclets for a living. Like, that's great. If I have a question about chiclets, I'll come to you. If I have a question about FLIR thermal imaging, I'll go to the guy at FLIR. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. All right, yeah. Ray, my final question to you, because you mentioned it a few times, and Mustafa just brought it up. He talked about patterns. Is there a consistency to paranormal incidents, or like, I hate to say it, but television and the recent rise and the success of shows that have dealt with ghosts and spirits and whatnot, they tell that this is a class 1 specter, you're going to see heat. This is a phase 2 whatever, you're going to see windows opening and closing. Is there any kind of consistency in what you see, or is each incident unique?
Everything is unique. Every situation, every environment that you put yourself in you're gonna get different results, in my opinion. There's no cookie cutter haunted house. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
not everything is the same. Every situation is different. It depends on the energy of the investigator. If they come off as an asshole, you're going to get a different response as to somebody who talks to somebody out of, with respect.
Right.
And it just depends. And, there's going to be a lot of times where the place isn't haunted. Sometimes it's the person. There could be something attached to them, but just no. There's not anything set in stone. No.
Okay. Interesting. Well, gentlemen, as we wrap up here, I appreciate you guys coming. Ray, we'll start with you. You have any plugs, anything you want to put out?
Hair plugs. I'm selling them. Actually, funny that you should mention that. September 5th. September 5th, Flumery Promotions will be at the Norfolk Masonic Temple doing a public ghost hunting event with Mustafa and Daryl from A&E's Ghost Hunters. Show them guns.
That's Norfolk, Virginia, for our listeners out there.
I can't crush it. I try.
But if you guys are in the Norfolk area, and a lot of the wrestling fans that go to the Masonic Temple, a lot of you have asked in the past couple of years, when are we going to get to ghost hunt this place? When are you going to get to go? Now's your chance. It's not that often that we get this opportunity. The last time I was there, I did a show for Daryl. It was on Paranormal Warehouse. It was a good show. The guy that they brought to the Masonic to do, what is it called? It's like he did a paranormal challenge, and we had him up in that metal ladder on the top floor, the second floor where all the ceremonial rooms are, where the story is some guy climbed up there, and when they went to go lock up the temple, they didn't know that the guy was up there. And when he climbed down the metal ladder, he slipped, fell, broke his neck, and died. And they didn't see him for 2 days later. Greg was up there in the floor space doing his challenge, and he freaked out. He screamed and saw shadows. And I got disembodied voices on my digital recorder. I asked, there's a story of a deacon that had a heart attack during a ceremony on the floor where all the ceremonial rooms are. So when I asked the question, I said, I understand that somebody died during a ceremony. Can you give me his title? And through the spirit box, the SP7, we get deacon. And that's what his title was deacon. Now, whether or not it's a coincidence, I don't know, but it's pretty interesting. And you guys are going to like it because we did capture some cool stuff, stuff that I can't quite explain. I have a couple of videos that I still can't explain.
Right.
But you guys are going to have a blast. And Daryl and Mustafa are going to make it so it's an enjoyable night. Go to Facebook.
I won't.
He's going to wear booty shorts. Trust me. If you go to Facebook to Flumery Promotions, you'll see all our events there with the Eventbrite links. One, go to it, have some fun, and who knows, you might learn something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these events, it's been pretty cool because we actually captured a lot of really, really, really awesome evidence, which I never really expect. I mean, I'm always kind of going in where it's like, okay, nothing's going to happen, but let me just go with the idea of, again, I think that's that human element. Let me just go in with the intention of just showing everybody, hey, this is how we do it on the show. This is the legit thing. This is like, if you want to see what somebody who's, at it's top professional level, like the stuff that we did into professional, like, in terms of like the TV, and we tell everybody about the stories, from the show, how things are done, how the entire way we investigate is conducted, how we, pick places. So if you're a fan of ghost hunters and paranormal investigative shows in general, I mean, we'll no questions off the table. We'll show you how people fake stuff if you want to know that. And we, caught people faking stuff in the past, and we can show you, hey, this is why we don't do this. And also, what's cool is I think because again we always have such a great time. We catch some of our best EVPs just having conversations.
Right.
Like, it's like literally just talking with somebody, and it's like somebody wants to like interject in the conversation. Like, and be like, oh, hey, and I want to add this, like, and you hear it. It's super cool. So, yeah, I would really encourage people to come and check it out if you have an interest in the paranormal or any local historical sites in your area. A lot of places. Galena Marine Hospital. I have tons of people messaging me from Galena, Illinois, who are like, I had no idea this place existed. I was like, it's freaking amazing. Go check it out. Like, you psycho. Like, what are you doing? You go to the mall 500 times? Go to the Galena Marine Hospital once. What's wrong with you?
There you go. Well, I guess then final thoughts there. Do you have any your social media, any platforms, anything you want to plug? Maybe a teaser for the upcoming season?
I cannot comment on that, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure there will be some network execs that guillotine me and then parade me all over social media, just hanging my head. But I can say that Brandon and I are actually working on something that we will be able to announce very soon. I can't yet. Lips are sealed, but look out for that. You can follow me on Instagram at mgatollari. You can see me on Twitter at TopGatto. My old M. Gatollari Twitter account got suspended because I was making fun of Legend of Zelda too much. The game's so repetitive. Every single freaking game, it's the same thing. And people on Twitter got mad, so they banned me, and I couldn't get my account back. And then, you can find me on Facebook, M. Gatollari as well. And, that's it.
Well, there you go. And for us, we're Wrestling with the Future. We're on Facebook at Wrestling with the Future Podcast. We're on Twitter at Wrestling Future, no G. That's Wrestling Future. We're currently now on Instagram, Wrestling with the Future on Instagram. Me personally, I'm Dan the Man Sebastiano. I'm at Twitter at theman.wwtf. theman_WWTF. So for Ray Savino, for Mustafa Gatollari, I'm Dan the Man Sebastiano. You all have a good night, and we will see you next time.